Hey, deserving listeners, it is episode 7, season 1, Love is Blind. I am a couples therapist. Let's watch this. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, watch those before you watch this. I am going to watch this reality TV show in which people met, fell in love, and proposed without ever seeing each other, and now they're getting to know each other. And I hope you like my hair. Because of the coronavirus, I can't go to the haircut. My hair is very bushy and out of control. So please forgive that. Let's watch. Let's see what happens.
I've been engaged for 10 days and finding somebody that truly fell in love with me for me and the inside, and then coming into the real world and fighting all these external battles. And it really has shown me that this society today is very superficial in age, race, creed, color, social status, money. There's a connection between two people, but one person is letting all those external stuff just affect that love.
So, as I've talked about before in previous episodes, Jessica and Mark, it's hard to tell. It's a reality TV show. I'm just watching this from the outside. Everything's condensed. But if I was, for educational purposes, to, say some things, here's what I'll say. It appears that Jessica just is not into Mark. And Mark, because of his insecurities, as we all have, he struggles with that realization. And it's easier to blame society than it is to recognize that I don't think she's into me. That really hurts. It's a very, very horrible thing to have to acknowledge that someone just isn't into you. If you've ever been dumped before, you know what that feels like. It hurts. And Mark is not only in essence being dumped by Jessica, but he's being dumped by her repeatedly because I don't know if the producers are telling them to stay together for the rest of the season or something, because several episodes ago they clearly were not a good couple, because Jessica, one, she basically says she's not sexually attracted to him at all. She says that he repulses her. She doesn't want to kiss him. He's not his type, and that happens. I think for all of us, we've met someone who liked us and we just weren't that into them. And I think most of us have liked someone and they weren't into us for whatever reason. And so again, Mark is having a hard time accepting that, and he's blaming society. And this is one of the things that we see people do in our society today, because the internet is filled with this kind of rhetoric that provides people with a convenient defense that is much more easier to swallow than maybe this person isn't into me. Because what happens when people have to really just sit with that this person whom I love is not into me, there's a lot of different ideas that also are not true but are worrisome to people. Like, maybe I'm not lovable. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not attractive. Maybe my personality isn't attractive. All those kinds of things, which can be quite distressing. It's so much easier to blame society. And you'll see incel, MGTOW, pickup artist community. I've done many episodes on these people. Mark is exhibiting that lingo. I don't know if he's picking up on that from the internet or it just randomly came to him, which I've seen happen. So I just want to rewind it and hear this, because in my estimation, it's not society's fault that Jessica doesn't like him. Now, we could say that society might play a role. Society tells women that they can't date men who are shorter than them, which is ridiculous. Like, what's the difference? There are plenty of people that I know who have, women, heterosexual women, who have dated men who were shorter than them, and they have beautiful relationships. What's the difference? I mean, past the initial kind of like, oh, I guess I've never dated someone shorter than me. I mean, there's a billion other factors that come into play when you're trying to fall in love or be compatible with someone. Height, I mean, what? Now, if you have a preference for height, okay, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a societal thing. You see a tall woman, like I have great-grandparents, two of my great-grandparents on my Japanese side. My great-grandmother was taller than my great-grandfather, and actually huskier too. She's probably like twice his weight. She's very kind of, burly, if you will. And my great-grandfather, Kirk Honda, was a very, very skinny, short man. And that's always kind of been a joke in my family. Now, if it was the other way around, it wouldn't even be noticeable. But we have these ideas of masculinity and femininity. And if you're a woman, heterosexual woman who has dated shorter men, you know that people have commented on it like, oh, he's shorter than you. That's interesting. Or he must have a really good personality, or whatever people say. So yes, Mark is right that maybe Jessica is incurring some of that silliness and expectation, and she is making a call that she is not going to be with Mark because of that societal influence. It doesn't appear that way to me. It could be, but it appears more like, because even in the pods, before they even saw each other, she rejected him. And then because she chose another guy, and then that guy rejected her, and so she didn't want to be without anybody, so she went back to Mark. So she didn't even know Mark was shorter than her, and she still rejected him. So, but Mark is having a hard time with that, and he's going to. So I just want to rewind this, especially if you are a male out there who feels lonely sometimes, and you go to the internet for help and you hear this kind of rhetoric. It's very seductive. It is massively destructive. It is understandable under the circumstances, but taken to a certain level, no joke, you literally, this is the seed that will grow into people, one, potentially being lonely the rest of their life because if you believe these premises, you completely just give up on women altogether because you're like, oh, they've all been infected by feminism or something. But taken to a further extreme, some of these guys end up committing mass murders. It's happened. So, because if you believe that Mark isn't exhibiting this level for sure, but there's a rhetoric online in the incel community where it is not only society's fault, but it's women's fault. They've all gotten together and they're using their power against men, and they deserve to be punished, that kind of language, which is really scary. So I just want to rewind this. His rhetoric is concerning to me because I've seen it in its more exaggerated form.
I've been engaged for 10 days, and finding somebody that truly fell in love with me for me and the inside, and then coming into the real world and fighting all these external battles, and it really has shown me that this society today is very superficial in age, race, creed, color, social status, money. There's a connection between two people, but one person is letting all those external stuff just affect that love. And it's kind of sad. How are you feeling?
So it is true that he lists all the other issues, like the fact that he is, I think, of Mexican descent, if I'm not mistaken. But she knew that in the pods. The fact that he's younger, he's 10 years younger than her, but she knew that in the pods. So the only thing that she didn't know was that he was shorter. I don't know what he's talking about, honestly. I get the defense. It's much easier to say that than to admit that she doesn't really like him. But if I were his therapist or his friend, I'd just be like, yeah, I hear you. And it kind of just sounds like she's just not into you. And dude, I've been there before. It sucks. And I'm sorry you're going through that. And by continuing to bark up that tree, you're beating your head up against the wall. Sorry to mix metaphors. Let's see how this conversation goes.
Drank too much.
Yeah, I didn't.
Sorry, I was totally my bad.
Waking up this morning, I know I overstepped my bounds last night. I overdrank. I definitely said some things I didn't really mean. I'm disappointed in myself about that, and definitely did not act according to my character or any way that I want to portray myself to my fiance.
You threw a couple wild cards and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
I know. I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, and that's another
My
thing.
bad. It's not cool.
If you were sober and you're throwing something in my face like that, I would probably walk out. Like last night, I understood the situation, what was kind of happening, and obviously the alcohol that was involved.
That's, something I got to do better at, is just knowing when to cut myself off and not get to that level.
Yeah, I'm not holding anything against you. I'm still here because I see how she looks at me. She's just fighting with herself.
I think we're both very intelligent people.
So again, that narrative that Mark has is she's fighting with herself. The true Jessica is in love with me and wants to marry me, But the bad Jessica, the one who's influenced by society, she's the one who doesn't want to be with me. So I see the fight. When I see this, that's not what I see. Of course, Mark has a better chance of knowing her than I do because he's spending all this time with her and I'm just watching a reality TV show. So maybe he knows better. But there's a possibility that that's just a convenient narrative that helps him to survive all this. Another narrative is that she was never into you from the beginning. And either she is playing a game to be on a reality TV show because people go on reality TV shows because they want to be famous, at least in part, if not 100%, which there's nothing wrong with. That's why I'm doing this YouTube channel partially is, I guess, for fame. I mean, my primary mission is try to make the world a better place by helping people to manage their relationships. But, it's not unusual or despicable to want a little bit of 15 minutes. But so there's that possibility that she's just kind of stringing this along. The other possibility is that she genuinely just doesn't know what she wants and she has a hard time figuring that out, which I've talked about in previous episodes. But anyway.
We can just...
Can work through it.
Yeah. No, so I'm not upset.
Okay, good.
Thanks for being so understanding and
Still being here in the morning.
And just to comment a little bit on that interaction, imagine if you've watched the previous episode, imagine you wake up in the morning and you remember you're told of the things that she did to him the previous night. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would just be like on my hands and knees just begging my wife to forgive me. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That must have been really hard for you. Here's what was going through my mind. I would elaborate more if I truly cared about my wife and wanted her to stay in love with me, which I do. And so there's that. The other thing is that we've done whole episodes on like how to apologize well, and she's apologizing and she seems sincere. But if I were Mark hearing that, I'd be like, well, okay, I hear that you're remorseful on some level, but do you really understand what you put me through? And why did you say those things? And how are we going to know that you're not going to do those things again? And is that how you really think? Because you said some things that might be hidden underneath the surface while you're not sober. Like, what's going on there? If I were in that relationship, I would want more explanation, I guess. I wouldn't ask for people to grovel, but I'd just be like, I think we need to talk about this a little more. Now, everyone's free to have the relationship they want to have. So this is just me reacting like a citizen.
You talk in patterns that I don't know how to read.
I will say that this show makes Atlanta look like a really classy city. Classy city? A really awesome city, lack of a better adjective.
Come hang out with me, please.
I just need a minute.
Whenever I see scenes like this, it just has the look that the producers set this all up. You're Damian, and you know you're being filmed, and you know this is not a good look that he's on his phone while she's like, come hang out with me. I'm guessing that if he wasn't being filmed or if he wasn't being told by a producer, he would have at least been polite and gone over. I have that skeptical eye when I see this sort of stuff. It's possible that Damian is actually like miffed about something and is being passive aggressive in this moment. People utilize the term passive aggressive wrongly a lot of times when they're actually just talking about aggressive things. This is passive aggressive if I'm reading it right. Damian is upset because of a fight they got into recently. And instead of saying, hey, I'm angry at you for what you did last night, or being aggressive in some dysfunctional way, he's communicating his anger and his hurt by just being on his phone and avoiding her. It's a message that he is hoping will be received by Gigi as a message that he's hurt and that he wants her to apologize. Now, this is not a functional way or a very good way to ask for, a very effective way to ask for someone to apologize to you. But when I am working with couples, I will say, it takes two to tango. So, if Gigi and Damian came in and told me about the situation, first I would talk with Damian and say, well, what were you feeling? It sounds like you were feeling hurt and angry. How can you communicate that in a functional way right now? Tell Gigi how you felt about what happened. Let's talk about those core feelings and give your partner a chance to rise to the occasion and know your feelings and feel bad for you because they love you and take care of you and apologize. Then I would turn to Gigi and I would say, so what did you see? Well, I saw him. He was avoiding me. He was on his phone. Well, how'd you feel about that? Well, it hurt my feelings that he was avoiding me. What do you think he was feeling in the moment? Well, I think he was feeling hurt and angry about last night. Okay. So even though Damian wasn't being very functional in his messaging regarding his hurt and anger, you could have helped by coming into the bedroom and saying something like, so are you hurt about last night? Do you want to talk about it? By reaching out, sometimes that can kind of grease the wheels. Now, people will say, well, why is that my responsibility? He's the one giving me the silent treatment in the bedroom. And I'll say, yeah, you're right. But, if you have that mentality of, why is that my responsibility? Your relationship isn't going to work. You have to let go of that. You just have to be the first person to do it. Now, if you're always the first person to cross that line and you feel like the other person never kind of gives you any kind of grace on that, then maybe you have a choice to make as to whether or not you want to be in that relationship. But the mindset of like, well, last time I reached out, I accommodated him, so this time he has to accommodate me. When people get into that kind of mindset, it's usually a sign of destruction. Now, one could say that the reason why you're in that mindset is because you have extended yourself so much and the other person rarely extends themselves. So there's a lot of detail there, but some people think that it's a rational or helpful way to think, like, keeping track of these, of what is owed to them, and that usually doesn't work out well.
I don't want to leave on a weird note. So tell me, what do we do now?
Well, it's hard, G, because, things get heated. I don't like how it's handled.
Like me yelling?
Yeah.
I come from a loud family. We fight a lot. When we fight, we yell.
So this brings up an interesting point. If you come from a family where it's normal to yell in a functional way, and you get involved with someone who doesn't come from a family like that, that can be a culture clash. It can be a family clash that needs to be accommodated for and communicated between the two people. It doesn't mean that Giannina is free to just yell at Damian because, well, I come from a family that yells at each other, so that's just the way things are. It just means that you have to, for Giannina, she has to be like, well, Damian doesn't really come from a family like that, so I have to maybe tone it down a little bit, maybe. Or maybe I have to sprinkle in some other words like, Damian, I need to yell at you, but it doesn't mean I hate you. I know you don't like it when I yell at you, but I want to reassure you that I still love you, but I need to yell at you right now. Maybe that's something that can be accommodated for. So her attitude about this is like, hey, I come from a family that yells. You're just going to have to live with it. That's not a helpful attitude. You can certainly retain your culture and your family way, but you can't just say that's just the way it's going to be. The other thing here is that Damian in that moment, she's like, how come you're not coming here? And Damian says like, well, I didn't like the way things were handled last night. Okay, good. You're not being passive at that moment. You're actually saying what's on your mind. But again, it doesn't communicate the deeper feelings, and it doesn't give the other person a chance to rise to the occasion and care for you. When you just sit there and say, I don't like the way things were, and you're going to have to prove to me that, you're going to, I don't know what he's expecting with that sort of attitude he has. A more functional way to be able to say, I didn't like the way what happened last night. I didn't like things were handled because you really hurt my feelings. I thought, I want to be in a relationship where we love each other and we don't fight a lot. And those kinds of fights, it really hurts my feelings. It really makes me feel like in those moments, it feels like you don't love me. And it really freaks me out because I worry that we're going to have fights like this all the time. And I don't think I can handle that. I don't think I have the strength to withstand that much conflict. That's a different way of communicating. Now, let me contrast the two. I didn't like the way things were handled last night. So Gigi's now like, okay, now I have to play this sort of game, or not game, but so that's one. Just imagine you're on the receiving end of that. I didn't like the way things were handled last night, as opposed to, I didn't like the way things were handled last night because I'm scared that if we fight like that all the time, we're going to break up, and I don't want that to happen. So the second one is one, more accurate, and two, Gigi gets the chance to feel like, oh, I get him now. I get where he's coming from. And you know what? I'm scared too. I don't want this relationship to end too. We're on the same page. And I feel softer in response to that. You're going to see a much faster reconciliation, much more understanding, much less likelihood of conflict in the future. And that's what I'm trying to get people to get to. Now, it takes courage, it takes trust, and if you have traumas in your past from your families, from your past intimate relationships, then it's going to be hard to trust, and you're going to be more bottled up with more walls. But those walls prevent you from getting what you deeply, deeply want and deserve, which is closeness. I'm going to rewind it a little bit.
So tell me, what do we do now?
Well, it's hard, G, because, things get heated. I don't like how it's handled.
Like me yelling?
Yeah.
I come from a loud family. We fight a lot. When we fight, we yell. We all yell, so it's normal. It's not normal to Damian. He doesn't yell. Okay, I won't yell at you. But when I'm at my wit's end, everything immediately becomes self-sabotage. Partly because I just didn't know how to communicate things that were really bothering me right now. This whole process, it's everything sped up, including the honeymoon stage. You know how you tell me this is the best sex of your life? Have you noticed that I don't return the compliment? I don't say it's the best sex of my life too.
Oh. Yeesh.
I said that one time, and you said, wow, that was amazing. That was great. Every time I go, that was really good.
It's great, but it's not fucking mind-blowing.
And the thing that states differently is I've never initiated with you. You've always...
Fine. You want to talk about improving your sex life. Totally fine. Wonderful conversation to have. Probably not the context, given that there's so much tension, the way they're going about it. Again, what is she saying? There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I'd like to improve our sex life a little bit. I want you to do this. I want us to try this. I want there to be more of this and less of that. Great. But she's just saying, have you ever noticed I've never said our sex is the best, we've ever had? One, that's just an insult, hoping that Damian is like, okay, well, what would you like to do to improve it? Two, she's referencing other people that she's had sex with as being better than him, which, regardless of gender, for some people that can be quite triggering. So the fact that Damian is, still engaged in this conversation, is saying something at this point. So it's interesting as to why Gigi would be bringing that up at that point. Now, again, it's a reality TV show. The producers might have said, let's go for it. We need that episode 7 fight. I don't know. But, wow, that was pretty brutal.
It's great, but it's not fucking mind-blowing.
And the thing that states differently is I've never initiated with you. You've always initiated it with me.
That's the problem. Thank you so much. Why? Why don't you initiate it? Why don't you seduce me? Even though I jump on you every freaking second, why don't you just look at me and take it?
Okay, so she's yelling, but in the context, the word she's saying is, she's telling him, this is what I would like. This is the beginning of a good conversation. I wish it could have been done in a more loving way. I mean, you don't have to be a jerk about it. There's nothing wrong with wanting your sex life to be different. It doesn't have to be in this contentious format.
I don't understand it. Why can't you just seduce me?
It's because you connect and disconnect with me so bad that to you it's sex.
And again, if I were here, just it's so hard to watch. If I were there as a therapist, I'd be like, okay, Damian, it's normal to get defensive. How about you just stick to what she's saying and try to prove to her that you get what she's saying. Even though she's not being very nice in the way she's communicating, she is communicating some vulnerability underneath the yelling. And there's a request in there. In my couples therapy sessions, I'm all about the requests or bids. There's a lot of requests that are going on in couples therapy during fights, and it's helpful to sometimes kind of analyze it that way. So what's the request? The request is that Giannina is asking for him to seduce her and to initiate sex more. That's what she's asking for. Instead of getting defensive, which he's getting, let's respond to that request, even though she's not saying, hey, Damian, I would like you to initiate more. That's a more rational request. She's being, you never initiate. Okay, behind that screaming is a request. Okay, Damian, what's the request? Oh, I don't know. Well, it sounds like she's asking you to initiate more and to, quote unquote, seduce her. How do you want to do that for her? And he'd be like, yes or no. You don't. Yes, no, maybe. What's the answer to the request? Well, sure. I'll try it. But no buts. You'll try it. We'll talk about the buts in a second. But your response is she has a request, and your response is, yeah, you'll give it a try. There's a larger conversation around that because maybe you need her to do something so that you can initiate more, or you need some reassurance, or whatever it is. But bottom line, hey, Giannina, you just made a request. You yelled, which wasn't great, but you made a request, which is great. You asserted yourself. You trusted him enough to ask for that. And Damian, with some coaching, you said, yes, I want to give it a try. Giannina, how do you feel about that? Well, I don't like his defensiveness. Yeah. How do you feel about the fact that he said he's willing to try to give you what you want? How do you feel about that? Well, it feels good. Okay, now we're working, And it takes a couples therapist, believe me, lots of months of therapy to help people to have these kinds of conversations so that they don't need to come to couples therapy anymore. So when I watch stuff like this, it's just like I just want to get my hands in there and just like, hey, there's another layer of communication and emotion here that is very lovely and normal and functional and not yelly and not defensive. Anyway, so I will rewind it a little bit.
Take it.
With me.
That's the problem. Thank you so much. Why? Why don't you initiate it? Why don't you seduce me? Even though I jump on you every freaking second, why don't you just look at me and take it? I don't understand it. Why can't you just seduce me?
It's because you connect and disconnect with me so bad that to you it's sex. To me it's not.
No, to me it's not just sex.
Damian is being defensive, but in his defensive reaction, he has a counter request, and that's what I do. I try to, again, break it down. Okay, Damian, let's going back to that. We did what we did. Let's go back to what you said as you were defending yourself. You were saying there's this hot and cold thing. Is there a request in there? Do you have a request for Giannina along those lines? Well, sometimes, she's hot and cold. Okay. Can you phrase it in a request? Trust that your fiance loves you enough to hear you. Now, maybe she can't accommodate you, but you'll never get anything from her if you don't give her a chance. So ask it in a request. Okay, fine. Giannina, will you please not be so hot and cold? Now, Giannina might be like, I don't know what you mean by hot and cold. Okay, now we're at least at the zone where we can actually start working things out. So again, I'll rewind it a little bit.
I don't understand. Initiate it. Why don't you seduce me? Even though I jump on you every freaking second, Why don't you just look at me and take it? I don't understand it. Why can't you just seduce me?
It's because you connect and disconnect with me so bad that to you it's sex. To me it's not.
No, to me it's not just sex. If it was just sex, then I would have sex with everyone. I don't. I chose you.
Yeah, but the difference is you say, hey, I don't love with you anymore. I don't feel it with you. Hey, let's have sex. Hey, we just had a massive fight in front of all of our friends. Fuck this, fuck me. And that's what it always is. It's always after we have an argument, aggressive discussion. I mean, it can't.
Because then we make up. You're saying that I like to have like angry sex.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you put on an emotional roller coaster, and that's why I don't initiate it. When those things happen consecutively and you make it a consistent change all the time with your attitude and personality, I don't know when you're up or down.
So that's interesting. So he's saying you're sort of up and down. We're fighting, we're not, and then, but you still want to have sex with me, and it's hard for me to do that because when I'm shocked by the fight we just got into, it's hard for me to want to have sex with you in that moment, let alone initiate sex with you. So that's why I'm not I'm sort of like in this shocked defensive stance, and I, it's hard for me to want to have sex with you. Totally normal. Now, for Giannina, she's like, well, that's how I make up. We got in a big fight. Having sex is a way to reconnect and a way to, say I'm sorry through behavior. So there's nothing wrong with either one of these people. It's just a matter of understanding each other. Maybe there's some accommodations there. Again, if I was there, this is what I'd be saying to help them understand each other, which is another function of couples therapy, is that I will help people. I'll reword what they're saying to the other person so that they can understand what the other person is saying. Because a lot of times people don't really understand what's happening. They don't have the words, and they're really distressed, and they say things in an aggressive, defensive way. So anyway, that's just what comes to mind.
Comes from me, and where strong love comes from me, and great sex is when we can have a good fucking day, G. You don't have to take a great moment and crush it with something because you feel like it's going too good.
Do I give you butterflies, Damian?
Not right now.
I lost my butterflies. And I've been trying to get them back.
So you're not in love with me anymore?
I don't know. Because I have been feeling so up and down and so in love and then so out of it. Do you understand?
I don't.
This interaction, although rough, is mostly functional. She's saying, I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. And he's saying, she says, I don't have butterflies. And he says, so you've fallen out of love with me? And she says, maybe. In that moment, that's rough. She can't do anything about her butterflies. She can't do anything about who she loves. That's just a feeling you have. He's obviously not going to jump for joy when that happens, but the two of them are handling it in a differentiated way. She is like, if I'm honest with him, this is going to hurt his feelings, and he might get upset. But this is how I feel. I've lost my butterflies. For him, in that moment, I've lost my butterflies. He's like, oh boy, if I ask her, are you in love with me anymore? The answer might be no. But it's better I know if she's in love with me or not than to not know. So here goes. Ask the question, are you in love with me anymore? And she says, I don't know. Or I can't remember what she said. Some ambivalence. Now, contrast this with Jessica and Mark. Jessica has repeatedly, like Giannina, said things that indicates that she's just not into Mark. Mark does not react the way Damian does. Mark is like, I have to fight, and society is telling her, Mark exhibits a less differentiated, less secure stance upon which to stand on the ability to be like, okay, I don't want to know the answer to this question, but I got to answer. I got to ask it anyway. Or I don't want to say this because it's going to hurt their feelings, but I got to say it anyway. And Jessica similarly, because if Jessica were exhibiting differentiation, she would do what Giannina is doing, which is Just stand tall and say how you feel. You're not into someone. Now, I'm not going to say that Giannina and Damian are more differentiated and more securely attached than Mark and Jessica, but in this moment, at least, they're exhibiting that.
That's it. All cards on the table. I told you it was all going to come out at once.
Sure came out. But nonetheless, I appreciate you opening up and being honest. I feel like it's easier communicating like this, like we're back in the pods, than it is face to face.
Do you feel like it's easier?
I feel like we just got a lot more on the table than we have in a while. Yeah.
Samesies.
Maybe I can be passionate now.
What?
You're lucky there's a wall between us.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What wall? No walls. You're so annoying.
I'm passionate as fuck.
Well, I didn't see it going that way. Wow. Okay. Well, that's. I mean, each to their own. God bless them for finding their way. I mean, it's certainly good content for a reality TV show, right?
Well, my daughter came home, surprised me and told me she's getting married. I think my biggest fear as a parent is for Amber. I know that she has been hurt in the past. She's very friendly and she's very outgoing. And I'm always so scared that somebody's gonna take advantage of that and she's gonna end up getting hurt.
Are you excited?
Yes, I am, but it's just, no, but you're stable, right? You work, you're reliable.
Financially stable, mentally, maybe not so much sometimes.
Well, you're in the right family for that.
He's an engineer. He works in construction.
But I gotta make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, that's got to be quite a shock if you're a mother, your daughter comes, or the cameras come, then your daughter comes and she says she's engaged. Yeah, that's quite a shocker to the system.
Myself,
I don't
Mom.
care. I know you can, but that's besides the point.
I have to say, if I was the mom and I watched enough reality TV, I'd be like, well, come on, it's reality TV. Who knows if you're actually going to get married or not. But, you know, who knows?
Kids are all I have. I know. She never got to know her father because he died. He died when she had just turned 5. So she had it tough because it was just me and them.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting detail that we learned about Amber's life, is that her father died when she was 5 years old. Now, again, as I've said in previous episodes, I can't diagnose from afar. If I were to actually assess people, I would have to see them for several weeks to even begin to develop hypotheses as to their personality and the development of their personality. And also, the conceptualization of personality development often is an art form, not a science anyway, so take all that with a grain of salt. But it's interesting because when I observe Amber's behavior towards Matthew Barnett, she's extremely playful, and she's in a way childish, not in a bad way, but she flirts and she plays with Barnett in a very playful, childish way. Again, not a bad childish way, a fun childish way. That's sort of her demeanor, is to be silly and that kind of thing. And you just have to wonder, based on that one detail, I'm sure Amber has a wide variety of experiences upon which her personality is based. But, you know, it is interesting to note that with the abandonment, when our parents die when we're young, it feels like an abandonment to us. Even though it's not an abandonment, I mean, the parents didn't purposely leave the planet, but it feels that way to the child. And sometimes the child will develop ideas like, well, if I was a better person, or if I got my dad to stop smoking, or if my parents didn't have to drive me to dance practice, they wouldn't have gotten that car accident. Or if I was a better kid, they wouldn't have drank so much and died. Kids develop those thoughts. Adults sometimes do too, but particularly kids, because one, the world revolves around them, and anything good that happens, they attribute to themselves, and anything bad happens, they attribute to themselves, because they just can't think of a world that exists with causalities outside of their own behavior, or it's hard for them anyway. And also because it just feels that way to them. It's just like, but the world took them away from me. If only I'd been a better person. So anyway, it's possible that Amber retained some of that playfulness that she enjoyed with her father when she was very young as a template for how to bond with males. We do that. It's a known thing that the way that we bond with our parents tends to be a template for how we bond with our romantic partners. And if there's gender involved, then sometimes that's involved as well. I don't know, but it is something to think about. And I will say that the more this season goes by, the more I think Amber is more securely attached and more differentiated. In the beginning, it looked like Amber was extremely undifferentiated, but I think I was just mistaking her playful flirtation as a lack of self. But I think she's seeming to exhibit some stability here. Now, it's possible that because Matthew Barnett is being so safe for Amber, that Amber is able to relax because she's like, well, this man loves me. I feel quite secure in that. He's proven it to me. He's not chaotic. He's not over drinking. He's not flirting with other people. I feel better. Our differentiation level will vary depending on the circumstances in which we live. So, maybe that's a factor as well. But anyway, I think I'm rambling. Let's continue watching.
Yeah, I got you.
We were supposed to go see Damian's parents, and they canceled last minute.
This was me, really wanting you guys to meet her. And she was excited about meeting you all. So, I'll try and figure out a way to, let her meet you guys. So, all right. Okay. I love you too.
Is it me that they don't want to meet? What did you tell them? Who wants to feel that?
My parents are supportive of me, but I don't know if they're supportive of how this experience is going. I'm not going to make them do something they don't want to do.
Honestly. Ugh. I'm thrown for a loop right now. You know how your parents react. Do they even know what's been going on this entire time?
No, they're very familiar with what's been going on. And that's why, I was saying it wasn't you that they didn't want to meet.
You know how your parents are. You knew that this would be a problem. You didn't do anything to prevent it. You didn't give them the full story beforehand. I'm just saying, we could have handled it differently. There's obviously a bigger issue here. You're not really fighting for them to meet me because this is the only time that we have to see them. All I know is that before leaving to come here, Damian's mom says, don't marry some whore off a reality TV show. So they probably think I'm some whore off of a reality TV show. This is gonna be really hard. We knew that this is what we signed up for. We knew that when we met our parents, it had to be in this process. You knew that.
I did not know that in the very beginning.
Hello!
Everybody reacts differently.
You've known this for 3 weeks. I'm over it.
One, don't yell. Do not yell at me.
Okay.
Don't yell at me.
Fine.
Because that's going to ruin our whole day.
Okay.
And if my family, they don't want to do all this.
Okay, that's interesting. So Damian's parents have said so all the other couples are meeting the parents. And Damian's parents is saying, no, I don't want to meet her, or I don't want to do the TV show. Giannina is interpreting that that Damian's parents already are rejecting her, which, makes sense that she might feel that way. Personally, I would imagine that Damian's parents don't want to do this because they don't want to be on reality TV. I can think of a lot of parents who would be like, look, Damian, if you want to get married, then, we support you. We have our questions about it, but we don't want to be dragged on reality TV. If you guys want to come over and we want to meet her, great, but we don't want the cameras there. I would just suspect that would be a pretty big factor into parents being like, no, I don't want to be a part of this process. Maybe, on the other hand, Damian's parents are not very warm or accepting of Damian's decisions or critical or something. And they're like, we do not support your decision to marry this person that you met on a reality TV show. It is a hard pill to swallow, I imagine, for most parents, but you see from the other parents, you know, it's just like, okay, well, if this is what's going to happen, then this is what's going to happen. So, you know, what would I do in a situation like that if my kid came to me? Man, that'd be a tough one. I mean, I would probably play along, but I would probably be like pretty skeptical I'd be like, well, we'll see what the long term plays out. I'll support my son or my daughter as they go through this, but you know, I'm not 100% sure that what is happening right now is actually happening, because you just never know what the future's going to hold in a situation like this on a reality TV show. Now, for Giannina, she's like yelling at him. So the one thing that I notice here is that she starts to raise her voice, and Damian's like, "You're yelling at me. Stop yelling at me." There's a nicer way to say that from both ends. There's a way of saying, like, when you yell at me, it freaks me out. Can you please stop? You know, that's a nicer way of putting it. But it's functional because he's saying, she's raising her voice. It is getting a little out of control. At least it's not his style. And then he's like, "You're yelling at me. You're just going to ruin our day today. Don't yell." And she's like, "Okay, I'm not going to yell." So that's a functional thing that the two of them have worked out. I've seen couples develop this style of managing their conflict. So, you know, even though this looks really tense and awful, if you're not familiar or don't like this sort of style of communicating in a relationship, you know, that's a functional thing. When we saw in the previous clip, you know, they fight and then, you know, they're pretty quick to make up. Research has found that there are various different styles of a relationship that can last forever. John Gottman here in Seattle actually observed and researched couples over many, many years to see which sort of couples survived and which sort of couples got divorced. And one of the things that he found was that this sort of couple, as long as there are 5 positives to every 1 negative, and as long as they don't develop contempt and they don't stonewall each other, and there's some other things, then chances are they're going to survive. Couples like Damian and Giannina, to therapists, traditionally look like they're totally dysfunctional. When these sorts of couples would come to therapy, therapists would be like, you guys gotta, you know, speak more calmly to each other. This sort of yelling at each other, sort of high contentious communication it's just not going to work. It's dysfunctional. Well, actually, that's not true. And that's what John Gottman gave us, was like, and John Gottman was very sure to tell therapists, look, this might look dysfunctional to you, and for you culturally, it might not be what you're used to, but this sort of couple can work, because the way a couple like this can work is they can have really bad moments, but as long as they have a lot of good moments, like a lot more good moments, then they tend to survive. So another couple that is more calm and cool and collected, they might have 1 fight a year, but they don't have as many wonderful moments together. So it's a bit more of a relaxed relationship. Well, that relationship will last as well. A couple that has a fight every day, but they also have jam-packed, wonderfully intimate exchanges all day long, verbally, emotionally, sexually, then that couple will survive as well. So you can't just look at a couple and be like, whoa, that was a pretty nasty fight, and predict whether or not they're going to last and judge whether or not this couple is doing the right thing. Because if you take away the fights, you might also take away the contact that provides them with all the other intimate moments that they have and the closeness that they have. I'm not quite sure which one it is. Well, I guess we'll find out as the season progresses here. But given that last fight, it kind of looks like they're one of those couples that is very fiery, lots of interaction, lots of intimacy, and occasional big blowouts, but a lot of good things to offset that. Again, the ratio that Gottman found was 5-to-1. He would actually observe, okay, that was a good moment between the couple. Okay, that was a bad moment. That was a good moment. And You need 5 good moments for every 1 bad moment. It's hard to quantify such a thing, but it is one of the things that I talk about with my couples and try to keep track of, sort of. But anyway, let's continue watching. The other thing I want to say is that from Giannina, I'm guessing that she's hurt by Damian's parents for rejecting her without ever meeting her. That would hurt your feelings. Also, I'm guessing that she's afraid that Damian will break up with her because of Damian's parents not approving of her. So right now she's hurt and she's afraid. She's not saying that. She's also potentially hurt by the notion that maybe Damian didn't really fight hard enough to make his parents accept her. Okay, it's all totally normal. She's not saying that. What she's saying is, you didn't fight for me, and what's wrong with you? A lot of accusation, a lot of yelling. And if I were here, I'd be like, okay, Giannina, let's slow down. What's going on? What emotions are you feeling? Let's communicate that. It's totally fine. Your feelings are good. They're normal. They're rational. Let's communicate those feelings. Let's not mask them with aggression and anger. From Damian's point of view, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. His parents are refusing to do it. What else is he supposed to say? But he could have been a little bit more communicative about his feelings as well. He could have come in and be like, okay, Giannina, let's slow down. Let me tell you, I love you. I want to be with you. I tried to convince my parents, but they're kind of stubborn along these lines, and they just don't want to do it. I gave it a shot, but I kind of get their perspective. It's just like, this is a big kind of shock to them. So I'm really sorry that they did that, and I can see how that would really hurt your feelings, and I could see why that would really scare you. I get it. So again, if you can get people to talk on that level, you can usually put an end to all these kinds of fights. So let's see how they manage this one. I'll rewind it a little bit.
We knew that this is what we signed up for. We knew that when we met our parents, it had to be in this process. You knew that.
I did not know that in the very beginning.
Hello!
Everybody reacts differently.
You've known this for 3 weeks. I'm over it.
1, don't yell. Do not yell at me.
Okay.
Don't yell at me.
Fine.
Because that's going to ruin our whole day.
Okay.
And if my family, they don't want to do all this, then I may not like it, but it's still my family at the end of the day. And I would not disrespect you and your family because it is last minute and it's stressful. And right now, I feel like you're jabbing at my family and I don't appreciate that.
I am not trying.
That's what it feels like.
Okay.
That's what it feels like.
Okay, that's what it feels like. Thank you for telling me what you're feeling.
G may not get a chance to meet my family. And question.
So Giannina, she's like, okay, I'm trying not to yell. So she's literally whispering, which is, a good technique. It's like, okay, how can I avoid yelling even though I have all the impulse to, I will whisper everything. And, notice she's not going like, I'm whispering because you're a pussy and you can't stand it when I yell. She's not saying that. She's just like, okay, I'm going to whisper. Like, that's functional. You can tell like she wants to yell, but, she's trying to adjust her behavior. That's good.
Question is, do we go through with the marriage without my family being there? Or if they are there, without really knowing her?
I'm so, this was already a really stressful morning, and I don't want to make it more stressful on you because I know this is really stressful on you. I'm not. But I also think that you should see a bigger picture because it's a really big thing right now.
So that was extremely functional. She says, I'm really stressed out. So that's true. Makes sense. She wants to, again, I have to take them on their word that they're actually wanting to get married. It's a reality TV show. I'm always skeptical, but I don't know. So if I'm going to take them at their word, their presentation here, she wants to get married. The parents don't want to see her. She's like, I'm very stressed out. I'm really sorry. I know I don't want to make things more stressful for you. I realize this is stressful for you. It's a wonderfully functional thing to say. And we're starting to see that volatility with positivity, with connection, which is good. Another couple, they might be very buttoned up and they might be very calm and cool, but they might miss out on those intimate, spontaneous moments. It's not a bad way to be. It's just therapists tend to privilege the calm couples and tend to pathologize these couples, is my point. So then physical contact. And honestly, when I see this kind of stuff, it makes me want to cry. When I'm working with couples and they make those leaps, it warms the heart. And I want to cry tears of joy and warmth because it's just like, good for you guys that, you're tough. The situation is tough and, you're together in it and you're taking care of each other. It's, it's a beautiful thing.
So what, am I just gonna meet them at the wedding?
Maybe.
Maybe? You're gonna leave me till last minute?
No, I'm gonna handle it.
I fell in love with Damian in the pods. Fell in love hard. Do I still love him? Yeah. Do I want those butterflies back? Absolutely. Do I want someone that I have to teach and tell, hey babe, touch me like that? No. But I mean, it just depends. Like, how strong is your love? How much are you willing to fight for it? I have no idea what's gonna happen at that wedding.
It's good to see. Although they've definitely had a lot of conflict, it's also clear that they have the differentiation and the security to trust themselves, trust the other, to navigate these difficult situations. I will say, as a sort of side note, she's like, did I want someone that I had to direct sexually and tell him what to do to please me? No, I didn't want that. It's a fantasy that is sometimes true, but rarely, that in a relationship, you're going to get the optimal sexual life naturally without having to direct the other person to do certain things. It's much more common and maybe universal that if you're going to if you're going to try to optimize your sexuality and your intimacy, then you're going to have to tell your partner what to do. Now, how do you tell your partner what to do sexually and intimately wise? Well, you could just directly say, put your hand here, do this thing, and this is how, let me show you how to do it. There's like very explicit directions. There's also communication, like making more noises when you enjoy something. Or later on saying like, oh, that was pretty good today, just hoping that the person draws their own conclusions. There's a lot of ways of communicating depending on, what you want to do. But sometimes you just got to, there's no indirect passive way of communicating. Sometimes you just got to be like, look, this is what's going to happen. People consider that unromantic or something. I consider it one of the most romantic things you can do because you trust the other person. You love each other so much. You're so comfortable with the other person that you are comfortable enough to say, this is my body and this is what I like. Now, most people are so ashamed of their bodies that they don't even want to talk about it. They're so ashamed of their sexuality that they don't want to ask for things. And that's the problem. It's the shame. It's not the being explicit about someone's sexual wants. It's the shame that we impose on ourselves is what we're doing. It's just such a problem. And anyway, so I'm glad that she's accepting the fact that she's in a relationship where she might have to be directive about what she wants sexually.
So, Ma, what questions do you have for Cameron?
Yeah, lay them
How
on
did
me.
you feel when you met her for the first time? You saw her
Physically?
Yeah, physically.
I mean, I was blown away.
Oh.
I was very stunned.
Really?
Yeah, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you. She's like, oh, she looks like me.
No,
Thank you.
very serious.
Well, yeah, she looks like a lot of my pictures when I was at her age.
I noticed, yeah.
Yeah.
She showed me some
Oh,
of the
really?
photo albums.
Yeah, right.
Definitely the smile
Yeah.
and a lot
yeah,
of the...
somewhere in there, yeah.
That's my mama.
Well, I heard something. She said that you were in a rap group one time.
Yeah, back in college, I used to do a lot of... I was in a hip hop group and we performed a little bit.
Do you remember it?
You want me to do that?
Yeah, why not?
Sure. I'm feeling like a kid with you. You're my main chick, those other girls are previews. Hop in the back, rolling up, then we're free to cruise. I drop the top down, feeling like we can't lose. I'm living in a dream and those haters wonder why I'm so high up that I feel like I can fly. So we throw our hands up, No concern for those lames that desert us. They don't deserve us. Blast off. The course is like a crash collision, cause every choice we make is like a rash decision. But the truth is hard to swallow. We're the leaders, baby, and they just hope to follow.
All right. That was great.
I definitely think that Cameron won my mom over. I saw her soften up right before my eyes. I mean,
Well, that was unexpected. Cameron, he just seems so uptight that when he said he was in a hip hop group, and he was about to perform just right there without a beat, I was like, oh God, this is gonna get bad. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Let's just put it that way.
I don't think he understands it. He's never seen me act like I'm acting. He's never seen me certain about anything like that before. I always compare myself to him and what he has. I'm nervous that he's not going to be accepting of what I'm doing. It's hard to explain it, I guess, in a way that makes sense. I rush into relationships. I have. This is something different. It's like she's cooler than me. She understands me, my humor, and I can literally say anything, do anything, and be myself 100% around her. And I've never once felt like she loves it. Like it's so crazy.
I don't want you to be jumping into something because of how you guys met. So many other things that are involved with saying that you want to marry someone, because marriage is the hardest fucking thing I have ever done in my life, right?
And I think...
And it took me 2 to 3 years to even get...
I will point out just a production element. I don't know if other reality TV shows do this, but they shoot through a lot of leaves and foreground that's out of focus. Maybe that's a new style thing. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just notable. I think they're trying to get the sort of subconscious impression to the viewer that you're watching through the bushes and you're spying on this relationship. Maybe if the camera is framed more formally, which is clearly easy for them to do, 'cause they're shaking the camera on purpose. They don't have to do that. It's not like the cameraman is, being jostled on a boat. I mean, he can just sit there and point the camera. It's not a big deal. There's probably like 4 or 5 cameras on them too. So, but they do this thing where they find natural foreground to shoot through, which I find to be not bothersome, but notable. But anyway, so Barnett's brother is saying, hey, jumping into marriage, that's a risk, man. That's a risk.
Get married, much less 2 to 3 weeks. You don't even realize how difficult it really, really gets. Marriage is about forgetting about yourself, and making sure that you put that other person before your needs and everything that you do. Are you willing to give up everything for this person? Everything.
So they, edited that conversation. I wish they would have just given us more. I'm guessing that Matthew said some response to that, like, I think I am, or I don't know. Also, I would have wished the brother to maybe ask more questions of his younger brother, like, hey, do you feel like this is the right thing? Are you in love? How are you doing? And I'm worried about you, younger brother, that you're making a rash decision here and you're going to get hurt, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I guess, my thing. The other thing is that I'll say is that the brother is exhibiting a wisdom that is common in society, that to meet someone and get married right away is inherently dysfunctional. It's not. Plenty of people get married soon after meeting each other and last a long time. Plenty of people get divorced under those circumstances, but plenty of people get divorced after 7 years of dating and then they get married. So there's no one way of guaranteeing or of making sure that your relationship is more functional than the other. The guy is right that marriage is work. It is hard. You do have to grow as a couple. You do have to grow individually in all the ways that I've been talking about. But, this model of meeting people in pods in front of cameras, it doesn't eliminate the possibility of it working out, for sure. So having said all that, I don't watch a lot of reality TV show when it comes to this sort of stuff, so I don't know what the success rate of like The Bachelorette is or anything. I'd be curious as to what the research shows about that. I suspect the success rate isn't very high, but I could also see the success rate being enhanced by the foxhole nature of it. When you put two people in a foxhole, you tend to bond over the fact that you endured something together. In fact, I think at least half of the function of a wedding is that function, is that you take two people, and for a year often in sort of modern mainstream society, for a year or longer, the couple is in the foxhole together, choosing all the different things you have to choose for a wedding, worrying about this and that, getting up on stage together, because that's what a wedding is. You're on stage. Anyone with stage fright knows that when you get married, it's like being on a stage. It's like doing a performance all day long. You have to deal with your crazy aunt or your crazy uncle or your parents that are this and that. And you're doing it together. And after the wedding is over and then the honeymoon, you're like, my God, we just endured something together. And a lot of couples today even plan all their weddings themselves. So it's a bonding thing. It's a potentially bonding thing. And so maybe a reality TV show like this, these, dyads, these couples are given an opportunity to bond even stronger because they're put in this, petri dish in front of everyone to watch, and it forces them to bond in a way of just like, man, we're the two of you, me and you, we're enduring some shit together right now. And only we understand what it was like to go through that because no one else was with us as we went through this. So, I could see that. I could also see another element of reality TV show working in that there's a lot of pressure put on these couples to survive, right? Because the producers and supposedly the audience is like kind of pulling for them. They're like, oh, I hope they make it. When I'm watching this, I want Cameron and Lauren to work out. I'm Amber and Barnett. I'm kind of pulling for them. I'm not sure. Gigi and Damian, I don't know. They seem to have some fiery nature. I'd be happy if they turned this thing around, but if they broke up, it wouldn't kill me. Matt and Jessica, as a citizen, not as a couples therapist, I hope that either something changes or they decide to call it quits. And then Kelly and Kenny, they seem like a great couple. Anyway, so there's a lot of pressure put on the couples to survive, right? So you're sitting there and you're with someone and you're like, okay, I'm going to orient all of my effort to accommodate this person and fall in love with them. I'm going to be romantic. I'm going to smile a lot. We're on camera. We gotta do our thing. I could see that going either way, actually, now that I kind of walk through it. I could see it being very fake and not being ultimately of the heart. But I could also see it sort of being like, okay, I'm going to hand myself over. And wow, this person's giving me a lot of positivity. Probably for the cameras, but man, that feels good. If we were dating under normal circumstances, we'd be on our phones, we'd be working, we would be distracted, we might be dating other people. I could see how this model might actually facilitate. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head. All right. Well, that does it for episode 7 of Love is Blind. And I hope that you liked it as much as I did. This is an entertaining show. Thank you, listeners, for suggesting I watch it. Tune in next time where I watch episode 8 and we'll see what happens. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself. And please, when you're having some feelings of hurt or anger or sadness or fear, communicate those feelings to your spouse or whoever in a way that gives them a chance to take care of you, in a way that is non-accusatory, in a way that doesn't just, stress out the other person. And when in doubt, just reach out, hold your spouse's hand, or put your hand on their shoulder, or kiss them, or hug, or something. That physical contact will bring down our stress level. It proves that the other person loves you, and if you reciprocate, it reminds, okay, we're bonded as a couple. We'll get through this together. Do all those things because you deserve it. You really, really do.